Good afternoon to all of you. I want to name some of our dear friends here, Ms. Graça Machel, Mr. Kgalema Motlanthe, former President of South Africa, Ms. Patricia de Lille, Mayor of Cape Town, Mandela family members, Mr. Chairman and trustees of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, honorable ministers, honorable Chilean delegation, ladies and gentlemen, and please all feel included when I said dear friends. It's not only, first of all, Happy Women's Day. As the first female president in my country, I feel really honored to be able to speak in this 12th lecture, particularly in this so special day for South African women and for women around the world. It's not only an honor, but also a privilege to address you from this platform where other figures who are so relevant in our history and our time have stood before, such as Kofi Annan, Desmond Tutu, the Archbishop, Wangari Maathai, Muhammad Yunus, Bill Clinton, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, Mary Robinson, among others, and of course, as Professor Ndebele just mentioned, my fellow countryman, Ariel Dorfman. It is also an honor to address all of you on behalf of an initiative by the Nelson Mandela Foundation. And less than 1 year after his passing, I cannot be part of this event without having present in my memory, my heart, and my mind an exceptional and irreplaceable man, Nelson Mandela, who this lecture is rightfully named for, but who also makes our spirits shine this afternoon. His image, existence, and name are synonymous with dignity. They are synonymous with the man who loved his people, who made unity possible, and who understood the value of humanity itself beyond all of the differences that exist. And if Madiba is a mentor and an example to follow for South Africa, it's also for us, for the rest of the planet. It is not only for the strength of his resistance, but also for his enormous ability to convert this resistance into a reason to promote understanding and not discord, because his resistance strengthened humanity. It is based on a profound certainty. There are no differences that justify exclusion. There are no differences that justify discrimination. There are no differences that justify injustice, violence, abuse, or oppression. It is a lesson and an inspiration that drives us and guides us to eradicate the shadows of fearing the other, prejudice, and confrontation among equals. It is a lesson that places the utmost importance on Nelson Mandela's perseverance, courage, generosity, and integrity, qualities that are what nurtured his unbreakable will for peace throughout his existence. And they are also the qualities required of any major change that is worthwhile in this planet. We have learned from him that not impatience, nor fear, nor small advantages change the world for the better. We have learned that the best way to serve our urgency is, as the poet Rimbaud said, armed with a burning patience. We have learned that fear cannot stop our battles, but rather make them more profound, transcendental, and courageous. We have learned that integrity is not a weakness, but rather a defense, perhaps the most unsurmountable of all. And above all, we have learned that the greatest strength in a historic process is its ability to bring together a community, an entire nation, on a common mission. In other words, when the subject of transformation is collective. Mandela has this nobility to be able to understand that no significant social process could occur if it did not regain the trust of South Africans, if they did not heal the relationship of a society divided for decades by segregation policies. With his example, he showed us that it is not possible to push around certain sectors of the population, steal their identity, and remove them from a process of national construction. Through his vision, he showed us that the only viable path is one of cohesion and unity. Our societies have paid a price far too high when unity and social cohesion are denied, when one group or another is excluded from historic processes and from the decisions that affect us all. Our continents knew the consequences of the inability to dialogue during the last century. Entire generations lived the brutal denial of the value of the other under the framework of authoritarian regimes. Directly or indirectly, we know the brutality of brothers killing brothers. We know the relentless cruelty of the state when it systematically violates the human rights of its citizens. This is a history that is hard to talk about, one where all of us have lost, but that we have the duty to recognize and take an honest look at. Because although it hurts us, we have a commitment that links us with the truth and the peace of future generations. It can be said that we share a common wound, a common pain, but we also share a sense of common pride. Chile and South Africa have been able to bear these painful experiences and move forward on transition towards democracy, social peace, and the recognition of human rights for everyone. In large part, because they were stolen from us in the past, we now know how to appreciate the true value of democracy and national unity. Our transitions from the military dictatorship, in the case of Chile, and apartheid, in the case of South Africa, to democracy, occur nearly simultaneously, making our learning process virtually parallel. In both cases, the privilege of living in peace took precedence, protected by the newly obtained return to order. That which is so essential for all people, the tranquility to be able to plan for one's future without fear of seeing legitimate dreams arbitrarily crushed. And I want to take this opportunity to pay tribute to all of those, and here is Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who made this transform into a state policy possible through the creation of the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions in Chile and South Africa, to the staunch defenders of human rights, lawyers, activists, men and women from churches, and of course, the victims and their families that spread the word so that all of us could have access to the truth. The truth is the first step assuring that we never again fall into these abysses. The truth is recognizing human dignity beyond ideological barriers that allow us to aspire to reparation and reconciliation, and the truth that continues to live in the apartheid and memory and human rights museums, both here and in Chile. Thanks to these efforts and to the recognition and reparation processes in our societies and institutions, we have been able to establish new relationships between our compatriots who were at one time in opposing trenches. Above all, we have been able to achieve a culture of human rights. Boys and girls now have new models of coexistence. We are creating trust, and we are witnessing the first product of peace. Thanks to the leaders who were able to look at the wounds and the pains of the people, we were able to establish democratic processes for ourselves that, despite all of the difficulties, have been successful and have been supported by ample social agreements. Although there's always room for improvement, this was done through instruments available to collectively process the differences between one another. This, without a doubt, is a great source of pride. Now that we share a common context, we must continue to address the challenges that have become successively more present. We must update our democracies and not concern ourselves solely with what is left to do or what we have not done, but to take on the challenges of the future in a more complex world. On the one hand, we are consolidating our own forms of democracy, creating ways to live together that are in line with our ethical consideration. Meanwhile, on the other hand, the needs for social cohesion are becoming even greater. And this is a good thing, as it is a sign that our nations are advancing. The political foundations of our systems are no longer limited to the recognition of civil rights that were previously denied. Freedom of expression, the right to vote in fair and periodic election, the right to assembly. Economic growth, reducing poverty, and social protection policies for the most vulnerable sectors are essential, but still also not enough. Nor it is enough that there is a growing middle class that has better access to education, information, goods, and services. Because this middle class, and especially young people, now living without fear and with a new perspective on living as a community, have created new challenges for us to overcome. So we have all challenges. The task of equality we haven't been able yet to achieve and to accomplish. But on the other hand, we have new challenges that pose us new tasks. In Chile, a study shows that confidence in institutions have been weakened, especially in those that have to do with political duties, such as political parties and Congress. And the latest OECD study on social indicators shows a drop in confidence in institutions, both in Chile and in South Africa. And this is not strange, because this is a global trend. The global decline in confidence in institutions between 2007 and 2012 was approximately 6 points. This mix between high levels of dissatisfaction and low level of confidence in institutions put us at risk what we worked so hard to recover, our democracy. So we must be capable of reading these powerful signs and acting accordingly. Our societies have changed, the world has changed, and together with this phenomenon, social movements around the planet have multiplied. Today, citizens on every continent are raising their voices, defying all dangers to demand more. And this is essential for the social cohesion, peace, and governance of our countries. Behind these new demands is a vision about what we understand to be fair and how to build it. Without a doubt, there is a changing view on legitimacy, on justice, that no longer depends solely on institutional order or adherence to rules and legal orders. Today, legitimacy or justice is much broader than legality and has a special role thanks to the citizen's voice. Whether it be in Cape Town, in Johannesburg, in Santiago de Chile, in Madrid, on Wall Street, or in Sidi Bouzid, in Tunisia, citizens have been making demands that are diverse in nature, but similar in their roots. And these roots are more and better democracy, more and better policies, more and better inclusion. In all of this expression of discontent, we see the need for changes, but above all, that these changes be driven by society. In summary, basic standards of legality are no longer enough. I would say representative democracy is no longer enough for citizens. Not with the stability of our institution, not with regards for a set of rights that have already been achieved. Today, on top of demands for democracy and equal distribution of opportunities, goods, and services, the demand for participation is essential. Societies want to be consulted in a more complex and complete manner than just through their votes. Stemming from this demand, a new objective is born for our institutions, for policies, and for the citizens themselves. In this demand to raise our standards beyond the strictly legal sense, giving rise to new forms of dialogue and social consultation is the key for legitimizing the entire modern democratic system. And thus, the key to our unity in diversity, to our ability of common belonging, to our dream communities or imagined communities, as Benedict Anderson described, to all nations. In other words, opening spaces and forums so that these new demands are reflected in the institutional, social, and economic sectors and pervade our structures is one of the central focuses for democratic legitimacy. The time has come to make structural changes in the way that we relate with each other and guarantee rights, opportunity, material goods, and participation. But of course, as usual, there's no magic recipe for this complex path. But the path that certainly is the wrong one is the path that denies its citizens the change needed in order to maintain governance, cohesion, and trust among the members of its community. And how should we understand and work towards these changes in order to successfully tackle the challenges of the future? First, we must take charge of the long-standing pending task we have with regards to inclusion and equality. Second, we must guarantee recognition of identities and of diversity. And third, all of these tasks should include participation in their implementation. Not only in the implementation, I would say, or also in the process of defining, prioritizing, and identify which is needed to do. As one woman told me when I was at UN Women, she said, "You know what? I don't want to be sitting in the table. I want to decide the shape of the table too." So that's what I tried to say just before. Let me expand on these ideas. Our first demand as developing nations and regions continues to be quality of life and equal distribution of goods, opportunities, and capabilities among our people. I'm stating a difficult fact when I said that a large part of Africa today, especially sub-Saharan Africa, prioritizes social struggles in terrible, harsh situations like extreme poverty, illnesses like Ebola and HIV, and hunger and malnutrition. Despite the complexity of this situation, economic figures show us important continental momentum. Over the last 15 years, Africa's GDP growth has been greater than in the rest of the developing world, except for China. And this is a promising outlook and future. Foreign investment have increased, and not only in extractive industry. Many countries have begun programs to improve infrastructure and increase their export capacity. Africa could transform its economy and undergo a large-scale growth in terms of development, according to the 2014 African Economic Outlook report. Despite this impulse, however, almost half of the population on this continent lives with less than $1.25 a day, according to data from the World Bank. So poverty and unemployment continue to be important problems in much of the region. And in other words, a strong economic performance had not helped to reduce poverty at the same rate. A similar situation exists in Latin America and the Caribbean. One out of every 4 people lives below the poverty line. A third of the population belongs to the middle class, and for the first time in Latin America and the Caribbean, the number of people in the middle class is higher than the number of poor people. They are indeed encouraging figures. However, despite this progress, inequality in the region is high, and the equality gap is not closing. And Chile is not an exception to this trend. Despite the fact that we have been able to reduce dramatically extreme poverty and maintain growth, the benefit of this progress have still not reached all people equally. A more equal distribution of wealth also requires the development models for our economies to consider the priorities of our sustained growth, and not one where the market operates as a separate entity from the strategic priorities of the people. And that, of course, requires strengthening the public sector. But above all, we know that there is a particular group that the benefits of development always reach later and in a reduced way. I'm referring, of course, to women. Cultural, economic, social, and political discrimination against women is one of the most scandalous inequalities that exist in our planet. And this is a reality not only in Chile, Africa, Latin America, and on the African continent. It's an entire reality around the world. And when I talk about discrimination, I'm referring to realities such as domestic violence against women, which affects nearly a third of women with partners around the world. I'm referring to the fact that 4 out of 10 murders of women around the world are committed by their partner or former partner, according to WHO. I'm referring to the daily violation of such basic rights like physical or mental integrity, the right to participate in community decisions, the right to live a life free of violence. I'm referring to the fact that 6 out of every 10 poor people in the world are women, or that 75% of women cannot get a loan from a bank because they have unpaid or unstable jobs and they don't have titles to property or goods. In addition, I'm referring to the discrimination, sexism, and lack of inclusion in relevant participation forum, peace talks, political representation, and leadership position in businesses and social organization. And as former director of UN Women, I had experience of working in the areas of integration and equality with diverse countries, many of them in this continent. And we move forward on initiatives that will allow us to increase female leadership and on development and training projects to improve women's incomes. We also promoted the creation of national policies against violence against women. So without a doubt, these initiatives are necessary, but we need to promote them concurrently in every country, from every international body, and as each of our individual duties. As President of Chile, this has also been my commitment. Make equality between men and women a state objective, mainstreaming public policies with this vision, and promoting a cultural change that has taken far too long. But this is just one of the phases of inequality and discrimination. Stigmatization and transgression stemming from culture or identity differences is another form of division that persists in our societies today, and we are all very aware of. This is why I insist that the progress of our societies in a globalized world requires us to rethink the way we incorporate cultural diversity in our rules on domestic coexistence and in our relationship with other countries. Our continents are a mosaic of people and communities. It is only from the affirmation of our identities that we can communicate with others. And as no nation can plan for its future if it rejects its diversity, the question to be asked is how we can make living together possible. How can we create spaces where no collective feels excluded and that allow us to generate a common us, both on a national level as well as an international dialogue? It is a complex topic and one that is in permanent evolution. We have a lot to learn on this topic from South Africa, Rainbow Nation, on the rights acquired by the 11 official languages in recognition of tradition and history. We have a lot to learn from Nelson Mandela and his tenacity to generate a common identity among South Africans and to take on this mission while constantly recognizing diversity. Chile, despite being a more cultural homogeneous country, also has an important challenge in recognizing and accepting our indigenous population. We're talking about a situation involving relinquishing lands and cultural tradition and way of doing things demands for structural changes. And this implies efforts and action. It is our responsibility to recognize the role that the state has played historically in the damage and violation of the rights of the indigenous population. And is this what the state today must recognize and repair? We must offer a democratic process and to hold conversations on the vindications that indigenous populations are demanding. We have the determination to generate institutional and political foundations to reestablish the trust necessary and to make a new deal possible. A new deal that constitutionally recognizes Chile as a pluricultural state, multicultural state, and that guarantees respect for the rights of all groups, consultation in decisions that involve different collectives, and the necessary tools for full integration in our democracy. And this is the effort that we have started in my government based on the implementation on the new institutional framework on this topic, while consulting indigenous populations as it is established in Convention number 169 of the ILO, with the handing over lands and tools that promote their participation in Parliament. As part of my program, I had the creation of some ministries. One of them is the Ministry for Women. The other is the Ministry for Indigenous People, and some others, like the Ministry of Culture. We have services, but not ministry, and we want to elevate its capacity and status. But we have not sent those projects to the Parliament because we will do what we said we're going to do. We will start consultations with indigenous groups in all the aspects that includes, and any decision can impact their lives, because we believe that's the way we should really be able to gain trust again and be able to build confidence that we are building a nation for all. Above all, we must encourage cultural change that allow us to recognize ourselves in the other, that allow us to understand, even with all the difficulties, our place in a common history, in order to, through dialogue and mutual understanding, build a common future. But this common future is not possible if we do not incorporate citizens in decision-making and in the implementation of this decision. This implies an active way of looking at participation, popular initiative or laws, referendum and plebiscite, incorporation of citizens' view in the diverse areas of public policy, citizen control, transparency, and accountability, among other initiatives, of course. Part of what Chile is proposing is to accept responsibility for the new challenges regarding social cohesion, not only in a quantitative way, but also with a qualitative perspective as well. For this reason, we are leading a large-scale structural reform process in the economic, social, and political dimension. In the political dimension, we're driving a national process that allows Chile to have a new constitution, to be able to generate a new institutional framework that our re-established social and political relationship can be based on. In the economic dimension, we started a fiscal reform that improves not only revenue collection, but also allow us to improve the distribution of revenues through taxation. These revenues will be earmarked for social policies like improving pension, investment in healthcare, and above all, to carry out a large-scale reform of our education system on all levels. In Chile, we do have very high levels of coverage of education. Primary, general education. We still have much more to do in terms of access to tertiary education, but we do have a huge challenge. That equality means not only access, but it means also quality of education, excellence of education. So that is our job now. So I was mentioning that the heart of this transformation is a structural reform in education at all levels. And our goal is to assure, in the medium term, quality, free of charge, and completely integrated education for our boys, girls, and adolescents. Through this objective, we're aiming to meet 3 goals: promote opportunities and inclusion for everyone, continue to support growth and sustainability of our economy going beyond our natural resources, promote a sense of civic duty and democratic values in our population. In short, this is an economic, social, and political goal at once. It is a powerful tool for shaping a new type of citizen, a new social structure, and for eradicating exclusion and injustice, opting for social peace. Because we, like Nelson Mandela, believe that, and I will quote him, education is the most powerful weapon we can use to change the world, end of quote. This is our great crusade to change the destiny of my country. My dear friends, our nations have come a long way since the democratic, political, moral, and unification struggles. We have made peace a goal, and democracy and integration values to be kept close. We must be consistent with this destiny that we have written for ourselves as countries. We must rise to the occasion, just as the honorable people who preceded us in decades past, and who together with our societies made our present possible, one where liberty, voting, and respect are guaranteed. But just as Nelson Mandela said, these victories are nothing more than the start of the road. Today, our goal of achieving unity should consider the new demands, and from the confidence of all members in our countries, we should create the best possible defense of cohesion, governance, and peace. Overcoming this challenge depends on us. demonstrating to millions of women and men that the truth of our ideals, the value of a vote, respect for differences, passion for dialogue, the justice in our laws, and the integrity of our institution also depends on us. And this is a new cause for humanity. A cause, like all great faiths, requires the best of us, of each of us. It requires action that is untiring, non-negotiable, and passionate for human dignity. It requires new, more horizontal leadership models that are based on dialogue. It requires an ability that is not always natural in those of us who exercise power, the ability to listen. And without a doubt, it requires the active participation of citizens capable of constructive criticism, of speaking out to demand that certain topics and demands be considered, and to exercise control of their authorities. And if what is being asked is a lot, what we are committing to our people and their future is so much more. In this land, the birthplace of the human species, we can dream of a new humanity, conscious of its existence, conscious of its differences, conscious of its past, and conscious of its common destiny. A humanity that is profoundly respectful of its memory and that has learned the lessons of coexistence, union, and justice that people like Madiba left us. Nelson Mandela asked, and I will quote, "When the history of our times is written, will we be remembered as the generation that turned our backs in a moment of global crisis, or will it be recorded that we did the right thing?" End of quote. We know that he did the right thing. Like him, we too want to be up to this challenge. A woman from my country, one of the most intelligent, talented, and brave women from my land. She was an artist, a musician, Violeta Parra, once wrote that if Africa and America hugged, despite the tears from both continents, it would be a happy hug because it could change the world and put an end to the sorrows. Please allow me to, this is exactly what she said, but please allow me to read in Spanish. América aquí presente, con sus hermanos del África, que empiece la fiesta mágica de corazones ardientes, se abracen los continentes por este momento cumbre, que surja una pervidumbre de lágrimas de alegría, se baile y cante a porfía, se acaben las pesadumbres. Despite the language difference, or perhaps because of the difference in languages, we have hope to build a common future. We can sing together, and we should, the poem about this better and bright future for all. Thank you very much.